You're despicable.
All right, welcome to the Golden Belt Buckle Podcast. Today we're going to continue covering this story of Mr. Harjinder Singh, the fella who committed vehicular homicide on the Florida Turnpike on the 12th of February. He has since made his first court appearance, and ever since, I'm telling you, this story just keeps getting bigger. Bigger to the point where I'm shocked that here in Canada, I tried to find stories on it. I wanted to see if the CBC had covered it, or if any major media. I even had an AI search done on it, see where can I find some stories from mainstream Canadian media talking about this accident in, accident's not an accident, it was a collision, in Florida on the Turnpike, and I couldn't find any. So it's shocking to me. Now, maybe we don't typically cover traffic accidents in the United States, and I understand that, but this is no small thing. Number one, let's clear something up. This wasn't an accident. This was a collision perpetrated by a man who has a history of gaming the system, who I believe, and probably you do too, that if it had been dark out, if the freeway hadn't been that busy, he probably would have kept going. If he could get away with it, if he could still drag that trailer, he probably would have left those people there. I really believe that. The look on the guy's face, even when he went into court. So it wasn't a collision. It wasn't an accident. This was a collision, okay? This was criminal. It was vehicular homicide. So yeah, I understand the Canadian press. You know, we've got things we're concerned about. Right? We got the Air Canada strike we're dealing with. We've got wildfires we're dealing with. But this has basically lit a powder keg ablaze. And this isn't a small story. This is huge news. All the way from the White House down. This isn't going away. It's only getting bigger. And heads are going to roll over this. I was reading the news. I got my computer sitting here, so if I look away, I'm looking at this. Secretary of Transportation, Pete Duffy, says, "We will use every tool at our disposal to hold these states and bad actors accountable." He's talking about Washington, California, and New Mexico. There's a war brewing in the United States right now over this issue, right? You got Washington that apparently gave this guy a license that he was not eligible for. And had he not got this license, obviously, this wouldn't have happened. You've got, now they're looking into California to see if they followed the rules, because it seems like that's kind of up in the air at this point. So, but then you got New Mexico. There was an officer who pulled him over for a speeding ticket, and he didn't do any English language proficiency tests on him, despite the fact that the law had already been put into practice a couple of months earlier. So apparently New Mexico, they're not even enforcing the ELP yet. So that's going to be a fight. So this is no small thing that's happening in the States right now. This is more or less validating Mr. Trump's immigration policies, right? This guy's a walking meme for his immigration policies. And I can kind of understand, if I get conspiratorial, I can understand why we wouldn't want to cover this, because right now, Canada, Mr. Carney and Mr. Trump, they're at loggerheads. And, you know, despite the fact, you know, the CBC has done some amazing reporting. And they have, let's not say they didn't. They did do some amazing reporting on the Driver Inc. scandal, and just some of the scams that have been going on in the Canadian trucking industry. Right? They're not covering this. They're not touching it. Neither is Global or any of them. And so I can see why, if I'm getting conspiratorial, why they wouldn't want to cover this, because why would we want to validate Mr. Trump? But let's think of it this way. As an average citizen of Canada, it's in my interest that we want to talk about this, because this isn't, like I said, this isn't just a traffic accident. This is a powder keg. And we want to talk about this because here in Canada, different provinces, we have the MELT program, mandatory entry-level driver training, mandatory entry-level training. And it varies by province, and not all provinces have it. But let's put the debate aside about how effective this training is. Let's put aside the fact that maybe we could do better with it. Let's put aside all the debate about, let's pretend Canada had the most amazing training. Let's pretend it's infallible. And, you know, our roads are, every Canadian driver could be guaranteed to come out of trucking school 100% safe. It still wouldn't matter because under reciprocity laws, an American who comes up here, an American company who has running rights, authority in Canada, they have every right to come up here. So even if we're doing everything right, there are how many? Thousands of Hargenders coming up through the border every day, right? They're running on our roads, on our 400 series highways, and well, they're running in every province, right? Putting our families at risk, right? I mean, look, you can debate all you want about, you know, the immigration policies in the States, but if you know, I watch a lot of YouTube, okay? I see a lot of these debates, you know, on university campuses and all that. If you leave that university campus or your family's house that you just had dinner at, and you've got your little child in the car, and you get on the freeway, and you get killed by one of these people, or your child does, or your wife or your husband, you're probably going to change your mind. I mean, look, we had a horrible accident about 10 years ago on the 401 near Windsor. A fellow was just coming back home with his family. He had his wife and 2 kids with him. And one of these fellas, he wasn't paying attention to the construction zone, drove right into the back of his camper, right up on over top of his camper, and over his cab. I don't know if the guy was American or not, but it really doesn't matter for the purposes of this. We want our drivers safe. They ended up killing his wife and I think his son or his daughter. One of them died. And I got a friend who worked for the tow truck service. Well, his wife did. She told me when they went out to the scene of the accident, the driver, his biggest concern was that he had a cut on his arm. Didn't give 2 shits about the people in the pickup truck, the family that he just destroyed. Didn't care. I got a cut on my arm. Right? Her husband told the guy, "Sit your ass down. You just killed 2 people. Shut up. Sit down." You know, so we want our roads safe. Doesn't matter where you come down. So it's, you know, Mr. Carney and anybody who would support him, you know, and probably anybody who would support Mr. Polivier, we would all say the world needs to cooperate with each other. It's a small place, right? There is a type of globalism that we all need to have, some kind of standardized rules for international trade, right? It makes sense, right? We deal with dangerous goods, right? We want things to be standardized so it stops confusion. Well, here in North America, we have reciprocity laws, right? It's in our interest, if we're going to recognize each other's driver's licenses and let us cross the border each way, that Mr. Trump and Mr. Carney work together, that our governments work together to make sure that our roads are safe, right? So we should be covering this story here in Canada. So let's go back to this whole thing here. Let's talk about the developments today that are coming about this. Whitehawk, now I already spoke about this the very day that they had the accident. I took one of the screenshots of a passerby, got the DOT numbers. I pointed out in my earlier video that their insurance was in the process of being canceled. And I didn't know why. I mean, I could guess it was because they just had that fatality, right? And the insurance company gets notified immediately. So but I wasn't going to say that for sure, right? I didn't know. But their insurance, Whitehawk's insurance, has been canceled. And some of the sources you can find on the internet that I've looked at, they will say that the business is permanently closed. They lost their insurance. They lost their authority to leave California. They're done. So how this plays out for Navneet Kaur, her name is, I don't know. You know, like I said in my earlier video, if they can establish a pattern that she has been hiring illegal or undocumented workers, being incorporated might not save her from prosecution. Okay, so it might not be a matter of them just closing their doors, right? Sinking that corporation, then peeling off the Whitehawk stickers and putting new ones up. They might be done. I hope they're done, right? So there's that. They're being looked at with a fine-tooth comb, right? If you ever want a case as to why we as truckers need to be safe, This is why, right here. Because any accident we get into, especially something like this, like, you never know, right? You're just going about your day. It could unleash a firestorm of scrutiny on your company. Whitehawk has a history of, I got a dog just escaped the other room. Whitehawk has a history of hiring these drivers apparently, and they've got suspended licenses, both safety and non-safety related. So you got drivers driving with no licenses here. I mean, we had a company, I worked for a company that we found a driver they had a suspended license and they were fired immediately. And this is why, right? So we're waiting to see what happens to this person. Now, I'm also thinking about it struck me, the officer in New Mexico, right? I'm sure the governor of Mexico is going to have a big battle with Washington now. That's what it sounds like. And that could go right down to the police department that had originally pulled Harjender over and gave him that speeding ticket. Could go right down to the officer. I don't know for sure, but I'm just trying to think ahead of this, right? What's going to happen to him? He probably pulled him over that night, wrote him the ticket, went home, thought nothing else of it. Who would have thought the guy he pulled over, if he had just given him an English proficiency test, he would have been pulled off the road? You know, I don't know how many people realize this, but when Harjender, after he had that accident, he was given an English proficiency test. He could only answer 2 of 12 questions, and he only knew, was it 1 of 4 road signs? He didn't know any of the road signs. He didn't know any English. You know, you would think common sense would tell you don't turn around in the median, but you know, if he couldn't read and he didn't have common sense, you know, I know if I lack common sense, but I can read and I look at that sign, it says no turnarounds, no U-turns. If I'm at least concerned with doing the right thing, I'm going to go up to the next exit and turn around. He couldn't read. He didn't even know his signs. So there's that detail. Like, he could have been, if he had just been given that test when he was on the side of the road, this would have been avoided. So that could be an issue. That poor officer, he's probably going to be put on blast too. Everybody's on blast. So right now, what you got the state of Washington, or was it state of Washington? You got California, you got New Mexico. They're all on blast. Okay, they're all being investigated. Whitehawk is being investigated. Harjender's in jail, and so the question is, how many people are getting sued by the families? I hope the family sues the pants off everybody, okay? That fella I mentioned on the 401, I heard an update about that fella a few years ago, and he was going through a tough time still. So the amount of damage that this guy has caused in the lives of the families that he killed, yeah, they deserve some kind of compensation. So, excuse me. So it always comes down to this. How do we as professional truck drivers deal with this? That's the real question. Because as professional truck drivers, we have to ask, what are the ramifications? Now, it's not just about, oh, I could be taken and detained by ICE. It's also, if every government agency right now is being put on blast for not enforcing the rules, well, then it's kind of likely that there's going to be a reaction, right? So it's unlikely, I think, moving forward, if we get pulled in for an inspection or if we get pulled over for a speeding ticket, I would say expect law enforcement to be more thorough in their duty, right? Which is what they're supposed to be anyways, but you know, they try to be gracious to us, right? They know we're all just working class citizens, so I think they try to be gracious, but don't expect that, right? Because you know, we always say, you go, you do your training, right? And they'll talk about what happens when there's an accident or some sort of thing goes wrong in the office. Like, well, we just want to know what happened. We don't want to blame anybody. We just want to know what went wrong in the process so we can fix it next time like a team. Well, that's not what's happening here. They're looking for blood. So, and you do not want to be the last one holding the ball. That's all I got today. Like and subscribe. I hope you watch the video right through to the end, and stay tuned for more. I don't know how long this doesn't seem to be going away. So anyway, keep the rubber sight down. I know it's not always fun. Somebody was saying that in the comments, but you know, if you want to have a lot of fun in the truck, go to skid school. I highly recommend it. Anyways, take care. Cheers.